Hi, this is Barry in DR. Welcome to what's sure to be an interesting interview. It's a pleasure to welcome back author, philanthropist, adventurer Dmitry Orlov. For our second encounter, I thought it would be interesting if I blitz emailed a few hundred subscribers to gain their perspective. I invited them to formulate, then submit their questions. Questions originating from Europe, America, Canada, and then some. This is the first time I've attempted this on the drescapes.com site and certainly on our recently released sister site, www.somethingfeelswrong.com. Without further delay, it's my pleasure to welcome back Dmitry Orlov. Dmitry, it's so great having you back. It's been a while, and how's things going on your side?
Oh, pretty well. Busy, working a lot, doing a lot of writing. Good to be back with you.
Thanks. I thought it'd be really interesting for our second visit if I sent out a blitz email about a week ago. And I fielded some questions from some of my subscribers, which I think you're going to find quite interesting. And this way it'll give our viewers different viewpoints from different angles. Are you ready to start?
Yes, I am.
One other thing, we're having a front right now, so if you're going to hear lightning or anything in the background, we'll just try and edit it out our best. Okay, first question. Dmitry, our opening question deals with the recent Go Vote victory beginning the Brexit. Some have even maintained years from now this may be viewed upon as the initial snowball that caused the avalanche that led to the breakup of NATO. Personally, I feel this should be viewed more as a humanitarian vote. Please share your thoughts regarding the recent Go vote on the Brexit.
Well, I think that the vote itself is sort of an accident. Didn't know what he was doing and ended up with the wrong result. I think the only political beneficiary of it potentially is Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour, and they're now trying to get rid of him as hard as they can and having trouble doing that. But basically, the Tories screwed up. I think that the EU is going to fall apart because the model that it is pursuing is a neo-colonialist model, where instead of third world empires owned by West European countries, now it's Eastern European countries that are owned by, and Southern European countries that are owned by Western European countries, and that's not turning out to be a good deal all around. Nobody's happy with it. Basically, those different regions need different development tracks, and add to that the impossibility of maintaining the euro because it's sort of shared responsibility, but it doesn't work out that way. So I think the EU is going to dwindle a project. As far as NATO, I don't think that Brexit is a blow to NATO necessarily, but it's what I think will kind of destroy NATO is that Turkey is no longer really part of it. It's part in name only. But if you look at what's been happening, the big air base that the U.S. built in Turkey in Italy is no longer accessible to NATO. It can no longer serve as the base of operations, which it was intended for. So that's what's going to doom NATO, I think.
In terms of the euro, which I agree wholeheartedly, it's a doomed currency. But over time, wouldn't you think the pound will be reverted into, and Britain might become looked at as the economic trading center of Europe?
Well, Britain isn't really capable of generating that kind of dynamism at this point. It's a very kind of set in its ways place, and it is very internally conflicted because of the many immigrants accepted. It just has a lot of problems. And the fact that City is a major financial hub really has to do a lot with things like money laundering and the heroin trade and various other shady activities. It's not really productive activities that are making City you know, some sort of an economic hub. It's all just, um, bezel. It's all just, financial fun and games.
Mm-hmm.
None of it has anything real to do with the goods and services economy.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, our second question comes from a subscriber out in Vegas. Regarding Trump's recent acceptance speech, please have Dmitry share his thoughts about it. Then, if time permits, I'd like to touch on the following couple of points about Trump's acceptance speech. Thanks for the opportunity to submit a question. Keep up the good posts. Part A, an hour and 15-minute speech, and not a word was mentioned about the $19 trillion deficit or the corrupt bankers. Dmitry, how is it possible to miss two of the biggest issues the nation's currently facing?
Oh, because basically Trump's whole point is that you can run a pyramid scheme until the moment comes when you run away. If you're at the top of the pyramid, you get first dibs on running away. That's his whole plan. It's always been his business plan. That's what he intends to do as a whole. Because he's not a fool. Anybody in his position would be trying to do the same thing. So why talk down the debt if that's all you are going to do about it? Why not talk it up?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is an interesting point. I feel it might have been a subtle signal for higher powers that may have been watching, as if to say, look, Hillary is losing the public support and fast. There's just too much corruption out in the open. People are now looking for change, or he wouldn't have the percentage of supporters that he maintains. In essence, what I feel Trump was saying is, I can keep the masses under control. If you allow this to unfold, and if I'm elected president, for you, I'll be looking the other way. I won't be raising eyebrows. It will continue to be business as usual. Dmitry, please share any comments on this point.
I think that the fact that so many people in the establishment are vehement anti-Trump would indicate that if his ploy is indeed to placate them, it's not working. On the other hand, he has spelled it out very plainly. I think his acceptance speech is just for public consumption. What was for specialist consumption was the foreign policy speech that he gave, which is the only I just read a written speech that was fairly cogent. And what he basically in that speech is that to decipher it a little bit, the idiotic jobs program that is U.S. military spending and war and terrorism and all of that is going to end, and all of the cons that have been running U.S. foreign policy since Bill Clinton's days are going to be put out on the curb. He spelled that out clearly. He pretty clearly spelled out that there's absolutely nothing to be gained from cultivating any sort of confrontation with Russia and China. So that was a gigantic gust of fresh air blowing through the foreign policy establishment. And they panicked. They are so afraid now that he's going to win, and then consequently they'll be unemployable.
His final point, Trump pounded hard on the subject of the nation's safety and security. Of course, anytime the safety of a nation or its public is mentioned, what is actually being said is more police, more law, and a further reduction of personal freedoms. I know there are four primordial fears: the fear of darkness, the fear of predators, the fear of abandonment, and the fear of chaos. In his hour and 15-minute speech, Trump did capitalize strongly on three of these fears very effectively. He elaborated on fear of predators, abandonment, and chaos, and the delusional crowd just loved it. Dmitry, will the masses ever learn how to read between the lines?
Obviously not. The whole narrative of safety translates into money to protect the establishment and the VIPs. Right, the United States is in a very precarious position because they've rotated millions of people through and Afghanistan and other foreign adventures, and these people come home absolutely convinced, a lot of them, that basically they were sent on um, missions that had absolutely no reason to exist. And a lot of them come to the realization that the US government is an illegitimate government. There are now hundreds of thousands of heavily armed people who have joined various types of insurgencies in a number of different states. Most recently, a lot of them have decided to declare war on police and have started shooting cops. Usually, when that sort of insurgency starts up, it never stops. It just continues until it destroys the government. That has happened every time such an insurgency took place. They don't just stop at shooting cops. Eventually, they start shooting judges and prosecutors and military officers and politicians. Um, and so this is really the focus. This will be the focus of whatever this war on terror is going to morph into, because clearly, terrorism is not a problem. Um, Domestic insurgency is, and the lack of legitimacy of the federal government. Those are the problems.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Moving on, this next question is actually coming from me. A substantial amount of emails that I field in one form or another are asking, how is it that the people can't see most terrorist attacks and shootings have been staged? You just somewhat touched on that. A collective comment would read something like, a fool can see through these poorly designed cover-ups. Are they taking us as fools? What I've been doing from my personal studies is I attempt explaining that they're not taking the masses as fools. They stopped doing that a long time ago. I continue by explaining if these elite groups actually wanted to stage these attacks and make them look real, it wouldn't be much of a problem for them. They're not taking us as fools, they're actually taking us as cowards because they know we won't do anything about it. Do you agree with this viewpoint? And if you do, at what point do you feel the shift transpired from fool to coward? Was it as far back as Vietnam, earlier, or perhaps more focused around the events of 9/11 and post? What's your take on it, Dmitry?
Oh, well, the conversion from fools to cowards definitely happened on 9/11. Basically, the whole country bought it at that point. And right now, the whole world knows that, three skyscrapers were demolished, two of them hit by airplanes, one not hit by airplanes. Um, that the explanations for why they collapsed, that the official explanations are completely bogus, that the only explanation that makes sense is controlled demolition, which was prearranged. Um, so the whole world knows that. The emperor is naked. Um, the whole world knows that the FBI has been basically entrapping all kinds of poor fools in order to stage a variety of um, pseudo-terrorist attacks in order to basically justify their budgets. That, everybody knows this, that terrorism is basically a jobs program in the US for some very incompetent people. And that also explains why the staged terror attacks are so badly staged, with all of these little telltale bits of the narrative that gets recycled, like the perpetrators leave their ID behind for some reason. In the case of 9/11, the ID happens to be, bomb-proof, survives, skyscraper collapse intact, not even a smudge. So it's all very ridiculous. It's all quite ridiculous. But because the Americans cannot countenance the fact that they're being run by a bunch of criminals, they put up with it and they say nothing.
Dimitri, our next subscriber asks, taking into account the closed bases in Afghanistan and Iraq, there are still somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 U.S. military bases located in 63 countries. 56% of the nation's GDP is being spent on the military complex, and it's bleeding American citizens dry, at least those of us who are still able to pay taxes. Yes, the prostitutes have successfully poised Russia as the aggressor. Now NATO is assembling their forces on or near Russian borders. NATO bases armed with ballistic missiles that can easily be converted into nuclear. Still, most Americans have the belief that Russia wants war. Look how close they put their country to our military bases. Ignorance is a dangerous attribute. Dmitry, where do you feel we are heading with this?
Well, the important thing to understand about the U.S. military is that it's very important for it, as a matter of survival, to avoid any serious conflict with any serious foe. So everybody understands, including the Russians, that, for instance, all of this posturing um, along Russia's western border is just posturing. Okay, so they put in some troops there, and they held some exercises. The number of troops is such that there's like 0.5 soldiers per kilometer of border. So that's not an invasion force. That's a joke. Everybody knows that NATO can't fight. Look at the last several engagements they had. Well, they've succeeded in bombing Serbia. Um, that's about it. That's the only success that they can claim. They've destroyed Libya. They're very good at destroying defenseless countries. But it's not like this has been known since Vietnam. The U.S. military cannot fight, cannot win. It's just a public jobs program for the incompetent. That is all it is. That's the reason it exists. And the reason it has to continue to exist is if you get rid of it, what are you going to do with these people who don't know how to do anything? You know, there are millions of them that depend on these handouts, all of these military families that wouldn't be able to make it without the military.
Yeah, there's an old saying, you'll never get anybody to see anything when their paycheck is deemed by not seeing it. So I'm in agreement with that.